Well, hi everybody. So today I'm going to be going over the Live to Air Sbach. Now I'm going to be right off the bat here. This is what I'm basically going to say. When I first got this thing, I was actually rather disappointed with it. Um, it has grown on me a little bit over the kind of over the weekend here, but for the most part, it does have some problems. And so it is $17, and this is going to be a little bit different of a format than I normally do it. But basically, we're still going to go ahead and run through the cockpit, run through the tablet, get the thing started, take it off, and fly it around. But towards the end here, I am going to kind of go through some of the things that I did find that are kind of broken on this plane. So hopefully they get around to fixing this stuff pretty quick. Um, Now it's not all bad. I will say it did grow on me over the weekend, but there are some problems with it. So hopefully this won't take up too much time, but we'll go ahead and get started here. Alrighty, well here we are in the cockpit of the Sbach. Um, it it looks okay. The model quality is actually really pretty good on this plane. The interior as well. There are some things that look a lot better than others. There are some things that don't look very good. The textures in here are fairly decent. Some of them don't line up, but you'll probably have to get pretty close to them to notice it, just kind of because of the pattern of everything and the way it. As you zoom out, you don't really notice it, but zoomed in, you will notice it. The exception to that is this thing back here. I don't really know what happened here, but it did not come out very well. So, but it's probably not something to worry about too much. Really, not probably going to look at it very often. Either way, the interior here it's all right. The model quality is pretty good, though. I will say that. Some of it does look pretty good. So it's yeah, there's just some things in here could be a little bit better. All right, so we're going to go through the tablet here real quick. Now, you can change the orientation of the tablet. You can tilt it up, left, right, down. Um, my only thing I would have like a change for this would be that I would like to get rid of it. I'd like to be able to hide it or something like that because I just really kind of don't want it here. But or at least all the time. It is somewhat necessary for a few things on this plane, but for the most part, I kind of just don't want it to be here. So what I am going to run through is not everything in here. There is not a manual for this thing, so most of your information is going to be here in the checklist app. But most of the three things I'm going to run through here real quick are going to be ground equipment, weight and balance, and acrobatics. And that's pretty much it. But either way, we've got ground equipment here, so we can add this car here, which I'm going to be honest does not look very good. Now it is Mercedes, and it is some kind of C class. I'm a little surprised they didn't put a Maybach in front of the S-Bach, but that's just me. So we've got static objects here. They're pitot covers, engine covers, things like that. Then we've got chocks and fuel truck. Now the fuel truck does serve an actual purpose here. It is necessary to refuel the plane, but this one is sort of the plain fuel truck. Depending upon which livery you're in, the fuel truck does kind of match the color scheme of your plane, but not every livery does that. So this is just one that it does not do that on. And then last thing in here, we've got pretty much our interior lights. I'm going to assume that's because the S-Block doesn't have interior lighting, and they just decided to put it in here in the tablet. States are basically cold and dark and ready for takeoff, so it's a quick start option or to return it to cold and dark. So we'll come in here and we'll come back to the menu here and select weight and balance. Now, weight and balance, again, there's not a manual for this thing, so this is kind of my experience with it. If you open up the default weight and balance menu here, these numbers do not always correspond to one another. And doing things in here does not seem to actually affect the plane. So like if we were to remove some of this, let's say we remove the front seat passenger, and if we remove the baggage weight, for some reason, no matter what's going on, it always adds this back to 22. The CG is always off in here. Again, I think the best solution to this is to just kind of ignore this. I think this kind of makes this largely irrelevant anyway. But as you can see, when we add in, let's say, the front seat passenger here, it's going to make the plane sink a little bit from the weight. But again, it's like they somewhat work in tandem, but they sometimes don't work well, because after updating the weight in here, it has updated the weight in here without actually setting the backseat pilot in here to make the weight equivalent to this. So I don't know. This thing seems a little bit buggy to me, but it does for the most part work. Can't ever get rid of the baggage. I mean, now in here it reads that we don't have any baggage, but over here it doesn't. So it is what it is. But just kind of ignore that one and just focus on this one. It seems to work okay. Doesn't seem to affect the plane, even if it is outside of the CG. It doesn't seem to do that much to it. Messing with the CG actually seems to make the plane a little bit worse, so I've just been leaving it alone. All right, so what we've got here is the fuel tanks and everything, and to refuel them, again, you will have to have the tank connected, but we'll go ahead and we'll type in 100% here, and we'll hit start, and it'll begin to fuel the tanks up here. Now, acrobatic mode is going to effectively block and remove any fuel that is in the left or the right tanks. The somewhat downside of this is that I can't refuel the center tank with this engaged. So if this is on, you're going to have to turn this. You can't refill the tank, basically. So you're going to have to uncheck this and then fill the tanks back up, and then turn it back on again to remove the weight from here. So we'll go ahead and click acrobatic mode. Now, I have noticed that for some reason it's not filling everything up to 100% anymore. Sometimes it does. Sometimes it doesn't. Again, I think this thing is a little bit buggy, but it does seem to work fairly well. So we've kind of gone over weight and balance. Now we'll go over the acrobatics tab here, app, whatever it is. This is pretty much just where you're going to change the color of the smoke. So, there are two things I would like them to do with this, one of which is I would really like some kind of a keybind shortcut to turn the smoke on. Again, there's no manual, so I haven't found anything that turns it on. Maybe there is, and I just haven't found it yet. But sort of the normal stuff like engage water rudder or using the flaps or anything like that does not apply to this one. So I would like a shortcut key for it. It just makes it a little bit nicer when you're flying around to turn the smoke on and off without having to look down at the cockpit and turn it on. The other thing is you will actually have to refill the smoke in this one. It is not unlimited, so I would kind of like it to have an option to where I could turn on unlimited smoke. I mean, I know it's not as realistic as having the limited smoke, but for the sake of kind of fun and just screwing around and flying, it would be nice to have unlimited smoke. You will have to land to refill the smoke. So it's got that for it, but going for it. But either way, now I'm going to be, I guess, a little bit of an English teacher here. There are a few typos in this tablet here. One of which I'm not going to go through all of them. I've noticed a couple of them, but one of which is refill smoke oil. This needs to be refill. And unless refill is some kind of weird terminology for the smoke canister that I have never heard before. But either way, I think this is supposed to be refill, and it's just I guess it might be a language thing as well. But either way, so the other thing about this tablet that I'm not a big fan of is the fact that it has the worst battery life of anything I've ever seen. I've been talking here for maybe I don't know, maybe 7-8 minutes or so, and we have used up 30% of the battery life. So we're going to need to connect the charging cable to it so that it doesn't die, because it will die on you in here. And so we need to click somewhere a little bit below the tablet here to reconnect the charging cable. Now, disconnect and connect are misspelled. They should have two ends instead of one. But that's pretty much it for the tablet. The last thing that I'm going to talk about is the notifications thing here, which got added with the first update for this plane, which if you did happen to buy this on like day 1 or day 2 and you got in here and you noticed that the canopy looked like frosted glass, that has been fixed. And when they fixed that, they added in this little notifications tab down here. But either way, it's kind of nice. I'm going to assume you're still going to get all the emails from wherever you bought this thing, that you know, their updates and everything like that. it is kind of nice for these sort of like livery updates. I do kind of hope that the livery updates get added in with the next update, though, because I don't really want to go to flightsim.to to download liveries for the plane, considering they're made by the people that make the plane. So this is one of the downloaded liveries, but it would be nice if it just kind of came with the next update as well. So I'm kind of hoping for that one. But either way, that's pretty much the sort of like what the interior here looks like and how the tablet works. So we're going to move on to the next section and go over that. Alrighty. Well, we'll go ahead and get this thing started here. One thing I will say is this thing does, before you start it, this thing does roll kind of off the start, so probably either want to put your chocks in or hold the brakes down. It does not have a parking brake, so we'll want to do that. Once it does actually start up and kind of after that initial tendency for it to roll, though, you can let go of the brakes and it'll sit still. So to get started here, we're going to want to make sure the propeller pitch and mixture are up at rich and full. And we'll go ahead and turn the fuel selector here up to the center tank. It's labeled acro there. And then come over here to the right side of the cockpit and turn on the battery. We'll turn on the fuel pump, avionics master, and nav lights. Mainly just because we're over here. It's not really necessary to turn on the avionics or the nav lights for startup, but either way. Then we'll come up here to the little key, and we'll just turn this all the way over to the right until it starts. And it's running. Go ahead and turn the fuel pump off. Now, one thing I will say about this thing that I did notice when I first got it, and to be fair, this could be my setup here for my PC, but I could not hear any of the switches or any of the fuel pump didn't make a noise, any of those things when I first got it. It wasn't actually until I put my headphones on that I could hear that. Now, overall, this plane is kind of quiet. I've actually turned the volume down just a little bit so I don't really have to talk over the motor while I'm doing this, but it is kind of a quiet plane. It was a little surprising to me how quiet it actually is, and then the fact that you don't even really hear this through the PC speakers. Now again, that could just be my setup, but it's not something that's happened to me with any other aircraft, so for Microsoft Flight Simulator, so it's what makes me think it has something to do with this one. But either way, that's pretty much getting it started. I guess the last thing is the circuit breaker does work, and so if you want to cut stuff in the circuit breaker for whatever reason, you can. But we're going to head out here to the end of the runway and take it off. Alrighty, well, made it down here to the end of the runway. One of the things I did want to mention that I actually do really like about this plane is that it sits here and it kind of rocks back and forth when it's at idle. And when you turn it while taxiing, it will kind of lean depending upon which way you're turning it. And I think that's I think both of those things are pretty nice touches to the plane. The one thing I will say is that if you are taxiing it, you're going too fast and you make too sharp a turn, it will dig the wing into the ground. So you might want to keep that in mind, but it's not really that big of a deal. So we're going to go ahead and take it off here. It is a pretty easy plane to take off, and it's a pretty easy plane to land. You probably won't have to dance on the rudder pedals that much to keep it straight on the runway, but either way, we're going to go ahead and throttle up here. Go ahead and kind of push the stick forward just a little bit to help lift the tail wheel off the ground, and that should happen around about 35 or 40 knots. Then we'll just go ahead and start pulling back on it. It should lift off around about 90. It should pretty easily be off the ground by about 100 knots. Alrighty, now as far as what I think of how this thing flies, I'm going to start out here by saying I like this thing more than I like the extra. That said, I don't like the extra that much in this game, but there are a few things about this thing that I like quite a bit more. One, it is faster than the extra. So in level flight, you'll probably be getting like 180, 185 knots out of this thing. It has a really pretty good acceleration rate. It does bleed speed, but it recovers that speed pretty quickly because of its acceleration rate. Now, one of the other things I don't really like about the extra is that it's kind of twitchy, and this thing is much more stable and smooth than the extra. It also is really good for what I'm going to do here in a second. When we kind of, this field should open up here in a second, and it sits on the ground really well. It's very easy to control. So you can just fly it here like 5 feet off the ground, and you're not going to have any problems with it. I'm barely making any adjustments at all to keep it nice and stable like this. It has a pretty nice roll rate. In all honesty, that was kind of a slow roll for this plane. It will roll incredibly fast. So I really do like how this thing rolls. It has a fairly good climb rate. The slow rolls are again much easier to control than the fast ones, but that as of right now, it's just me not figuring out when I need to counter it to stop it, because I either counter it too late or I counter it too early, and either way. Now, as far as how this thing behaves for your sort of aerobatic maneuvers, any of your what I'm going to call basic maneuvers, this thing is going to be really good for. So loops, Cubans, again rolls, you know, Immelmans, split S's, all of those things. It's going to do really well. The place that I think this plane suffers is in its stall characteristic and anything that involves a stall. So it's not going to do stalls very well. You can do them, and you can kind of get it to do it. It does seem to get a little weird when you're doing it. It's not going to spin for you. You might be able to get it into a spin. I'll be a little amazed if you can. Like, I can do it, but I really have to force it to get it to spin. And it's not a very violent spin. It's not a very quick spin. It's a very slow, easy spin. And to get out of it, you don't even really need to use your rudders. You can pretty much just recenter the stick, and you're fine. So, assuming you've got enough altitude and everything like that, getting out of a spin, if you do, again, manage to get yourself into one, is very easy to get out of. Now, it is a pretty fun plane to actually fly. It's very good for the basic maneuvers. Again, it's the stalls where it suffers. And it's one of those things that I think if the developers can go back and kind of tweak that a little bit and make the stall characteristic a little bit better, at least for me, that's kind of the most important thing I think they need to work on is the stall. But if they can, I think this plane can be really good. It's really quite a bit of fun as it is right now to fly. It would just be so much better if it stalled a little bit better. Alrighty, well, we'll bring it in here for a landing. I'm going a little bit fast. I probably want to come in here about 95 knots. Probably need to leave the RPM around like 1800 to 12 or to 2000 to maintain 90. But you will want to set down around about 60 knots. Again, it's pretty easy to do a wheeled landing in this thing. 3-point landings are a lot easier. Hopefully I've missed that bear. And we're just going to go ahead and cut the throttle here, flare it a little bit, and we should set down around about like 60, 65 knots. And as long as you're around like 60 or 65, it shouldn't bounce for you. It's a pretty well-behaved one. And then just pretty much keep holding the stick back, and you can lay on the brakes until a complete stop, and it will not nose plant the plane. So that's pretty much flying around, taking off, and landing the Sbach here. So I'm going to kind of go into my sort of final thoughts on the plane, and that's pretty much going to be it for today. Alrighty, well, one of the problems here is going to be that as we look at the wheel fairings here, we can see that they kind of disappear when you're underneath them. And then we've got the liveries here. The liveries do have some problems. There are a lot of these kind of like white lines all over the plane. Now, they did kind of fix those a little bit with the 2 liveries that were released for it, but overall it still has some problems with it. The liveries themselves do not look all that great. Not in terms of design or anything like that. Just some of them don't line up. They don't cover everything. There are these weird white lines in it, which you don't see unless the plane is black or some other color. The orange one is probably the best looking one that I have for it. Alright, so the next thing is that we do not have a pilot model in here, and I knew that when I bought it. I knew that it didn't have one, but considering all of the other things that are sort of wrong with this plane, that does become something that I think they need to fix as well. Now, it's not all bad on the exterior. The model quality for this plane is actually really good. Like, overall, the model looks really very good. But the liveries need to be fixed. The pilot model needs to be added. Now, the smoke has a few problems here. The first one is that it seems to sometimes engulf the plane. It doesn't actually look as though it's trailing kind of from underneath the plane and then coming, out past the tail. It looks kind of just like it has engulfed the plane and then it goes behind it. So it doesn't work so well in that. The other problem is that for some reason the smoke kind of becomes detached from the plane. And what I mean by that is it should be up on screen, or it's probably been playing here for a second. But you'll do a maneuver and the smoke will continue to mimic your maneuver, but it's no longer tracking with the plane. It's like on its own little maneuver. It's just the way it detaches is just really kind of weird, and it needs to be fixed. Alrighty, well this ran a little bit longer than I'd expected, but I wouldn't have felt right about the review if I didn't show some of the problems this thing has. So overall, my opinion of this plane is it is quite fun to fly. I do have a lot of fun just doing stunts in it and flying it around. That said, I think they need to work on the stall characteristic a little bit, but either way, it is relatively easy to fly. It's relatively stable. It's pretty easy to get it to do what you want it to do, minus the stalls. That's pretty much the good points in the Sbach. I think the rest of the plane needs a little bit of work. The liveries need to be cleaned up and fixed. The model quality, though, is quite good. The way the model looks, I mean, if we were to strip the textures off of everything, it would look pretty good. And some of the textures do look quite good. The wheel fairings need to be fixed. The smoke needs to be fixed. Kind of would like it if they added a pilot, but again, I knew that was missing going into this. The sound quality is probably not bad. It's just a little bit quiet, and I don't think that it really sounds like the Sbach. It's not deep enough. I mean, the Sbach has a slightly deeper rumble to it, especially when sitting at idle. It sounds more like a powerful engine than this one does. Now, in fairness, I've never heard an Sbach in real life, just YouTube videos and stuff like that. So, the sound quality isn't poor. It's just quiet. And it doesn't sound quite right. So here's my overall conclusion of the Sbach. This is going to be a plane that I try and keep up with to keep you guys updated on it, because I do think this one has the potential to be very, very good. I don't think that it's there yet. I think that it could be if they fix some of these things, the stalls, the liveries, sound effects, and if they actually got the smoke to work. It could easily be worth $17 and not be overpriced, which is unfortunate because I really wanted to like this thing. I really just wanted to get in here and have a nice aerobatic aircraft. Again, I'm not a big fan of the extra in this game. The pitch is still a lot of fun though. But bottom line, it's just got some problems. That's really the only way to look at it. And with the speed that they fixed the canopy, I'm kind of hoping that there will be an update here soon that will begin to address some of these things. And again, I'm going to try and keep you guys updated on this one because I do think it could be really good. But that's pretty much it for this one. So thanks for watching, everybody, and I hope I'll see you all back here next time.